Hi, Joseph.
How's it going, Josh?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
All right, so you've done a lot of action before. You've been in big franchise stuff, but this is your first like huge superhero project. What drew you to this?
It was the script. I didn't even, to be honest, I didn't even. I probably shouldn't admit this, but I didn't know that there were comic books that accompanied this script when I first read it. Nobody told me, and I was never a big like comic book guy, but I was as a kid, and I just hadn't heard of it. But once I did, and once I'd read the script, it wasn't so much that it was a superhero story as much as it was a great sort of family saga. It felt like there were the makings of this modern tragedy in a weird way. And I loved all those elements that sort of went into the psyche behind being a superhero.
Awesome. So, this series is pretty complex in how it deals with heroes and villains, but there's a lot of gray areas. So, I want to ask, who do you think the real villain of the story is?
Ooh. Um, well, I don't want to give too much away. Here,
Spoiler, just full spoilers. Spoil season 2 and 3 and 4. No.
let me answer it like this. My character is very rigid in his beliefs, especially in this code. And I think that it makes him villain-like in a lot of ways, in that he refuses to sort of bend, but is sort of forced to start listening and seeing different ideas and understanding the questioning behind what he's always believed in. But I don't think that his intentions were ever bad. I think he's always a guy who wants the greater good. It's always to serve the people, and it's always to, make the world a better place, if you will. The villain, there's a line in there that says good and bad isn't black and white anymore. It's somewhere in the gray. And I think that a lot of times people can pretend to be something, but under that there's nefarious sort of intentions. And I think that there's a character in this that has, when you can't trust family, I think you fall into the villain side.
It's funny you mentioned that just because your character, Sheldon, in the flashbacks, he doesn't demand, he asks for a lot of trust.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the present day, he kind of sort of expects that trust from people who maybe don't have that in him. How did you approach playing two different versions of Sheldon across these different eras?
Well, in the beginning, he was a guy who was sort of following something blindly. He was he literally loses his mind after the death of his father, and goes into this crazy psychotic sort of, has these visions that sort of lead them to this island, which ultimately gives them these powers. So he was able to sort of gain the trust of the people around him because of his blind faith in whatever was out there. Cut to 90 years later, and this is a guy who's now been running the show for so long, and wears the responsibility and the expectation, the regret. You can feel it on him, and that he's a guy that's questioning some of the ways that he's done it. Have they really affected change? And so that to me was the most fun to play with, was figuring out why in the beginning do we go, and why did they follow him? And then it's like, why are they still following it? And what does he need to do to sort of regain that trust and that ability to lead? Does that answer your question?
It does. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I got to wrap it up. I appreciate talking to you. It's a great show. I hope to see a lot more of it.
Thank you, Joseph. Appreciate that.
Take care, Josh. So,
Joseph, what do you have behind you? I'm looking at all your cool stuff behind you.
I have a picture of me meeting Steve Nash.
That's cool.
A bunch of toys, a bunch of comics, a bunch of books, a speaker.
What's your favorite? What's your favorite on that shelf?
Probably Grant Morrison's New X-Men right there. It's
cool.
a good one. So this is kind of a mini freak out. I'm supposed to ask you about the popular revival and when it's happening, but I think Netflix will kill me if I ask about that. So just move on.
I think that's a question for Ryan Murphy. I thank you. That's a really nice thing for you to even ask about. I was so funny. I was literally this morning, I couldn't sleep, but I got up early, like 1:45 a.m. And I was like, just finally rolled out of bed at 3 because I'm in Australia. And I was walking on the treadmill and I was talking to Carly Pope, who played Sam. And we were FaceTiming back and forth, like sending each other videos or not FaceTiming audio, but messages back to each other.
That's awesome. And in doing the research
great
for this, watching the show, you and Josh Duhamel and Carly Pope were in a movie recently together. So I just had to ask about your chemistry with Josh Duhamel
I shot that. I produced that movie as well. So I called him and he was such a peach and came and did that movie with us. He's so really good in that movie too. I don't know. Josh and I just instantly, chemistry is this elusive thing. Either you have it or you don't. And we have great chemistry, and it's like acting for free. It's just there built in, because sometimes you don't have that with people. And so we have it. So it was so nice. And then we finished the movie, and literally like 2 months later, I got cast in this with him. And I was like, so I had like a full year of JD in my life, and it was really nice. And then I asked Carly to come do us a huge favor and come do that part in the movie, because I thought it would be really fun to have her and have her be so mean to me. Because in the movie, she's really mean to my character, and I thought it would be a nice, like, just desserts from back of the popular days.
So this series, this is the second time you've played a journalist in a superhero franchise.
It's really my thing, right?
I guess so.
It's kind of, I guess it's, yeah. She's Leslie Bibb equals a journalist.
So it's funny because you play basically two different versions of the same character. How did you approach that?
Well, they're not the same character. Christine Everhart.
No. Sorry.
Oh, I was about to say. I was about to
timelines.
Be like, I was like,
no,
oh,
yeah.
yes,
sorry.
Yes. I was
sorry.
like, Christine Everhart. She's a little tricky, that one. So say that again. At what? So
the two different timelines. You're basically playing two different versions of Grace.
Yeah, well, isn't that, it's like your young version of yourself, and then the older, like the life has happened. And I thought that was really interesting when I read the show, because I hadn't really, if you're going to do a superhero, it's done. It's been done really well before. And I mean, I'm partial to Iron Man. I think that was done perfectly. And I did, like, Deadpool's version, I think, was done really well. And so when I read this, I was like, oh, I've never seen a superhero show where you see people at the beginning and you sort of see them at the end of their lives, and you sort of see how much they've changed. And you will, in the show's journey, continue to see them as they age and evolve. And I thought that was an interesting aspect of the show. I like the fact that you see Grace in her young, idealistic, kind of no BS truth seeker that she is. And then you see her as she's gotten older, and that, I mean, she's of course fearless because she's a superhero, but I feel like in her personal life, she has become a bit, I don't know if fearful is the right word, but she is trying to keep a lot of balls up in the air, and she's trying to, it's hard for her, she's trying to be as fearless as she is at her job as she is with her family, and trying to keep it afloat. And you're seeing her and it's not really working. So I think by the end of like episode 7 or so, you sort of see that she needs to go back to the girl that she was and sort of find that voice again that she had when she was, in her 20s.
Thank you, Leslie. I really appreciate talking to you. It was great.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Enjoyed the show. Have a good one. How's it going, Mark?
Good to see you.
Nice to see you as well. I guess let's start off with, because the show is pretty timely. So why would you say now is the right time for Jupiter's Legacy to premiere on Netflix?
Do you know, it feels like after 20 years of superhero movies and TV shows and everything, we're ready for something like this now. Something as crazy and big and grand as this would have been impossible. I think even 5 years ago, this would have been impossible. I remember sitting in Marvel meetings where people used to say, do you think the audience can handle all the Avengers in one movie? Like to put 7 characters in one film, it just seemed outrageous because nobody had ever even tried 2, really, 2 or 3. So what I love is that the culture is ready for this now. We can handle anything, things like WandaVision and so on, Avengers Endgame. These are really complex things that would have been unthinkable. But now the audience in general, I think, is as sophisticated as the comic book audience. Like my aunties know that Tony Stark is Iron Man and is dating somebody called Pepper, It's like the culture now is our culture, isn't it? Like the mainstream is us now, which is incredible. So we can now do stuff that could only have been comic books before.
Awesome. Yeah. And the comic series itself is very, very ambitious. And the different storylines that you weave in, and there are some changes in the show, but the core of it is still the same struggle and the same themes. What was your favorite change that they made for the show from your source material?
Well, this is different from most things because I run Miller World, I'm president of Miller World. So all the decisions were really important as a group, so there was no surprises. What we had to do was actually expand upon it. So we never contradicted anything, but what we did is, because comic books are so small in comparison to a season of a TV show, we'd have run out of story within a season and a half or something, even though there's 6 volumes of the books. So what we did is expand things out. It was Stephen DeKnight had a very, very interesting idea early on, which was to take the origin story of going to the island and make it half of season 1, which was an incredible idea. Because at first I was like, could it feel a bit stretched out? And he was like, no, it'll feel like Richard Dreyfuss in Close Encounters. This is a big epic story. And I was like, right, I'm on. When the minute he wrote up the plot synopsis, I was like, I get it. It's like, this just works. So what was 8 pages of issue 1 and 7 pages of issue 4 is literally half of season 1. And it's beautiful because you're so with those characters the whole way. And whenever they do meet what's on the island, it really means something. And when we had it planned as a movie about 6 years ago before I sold to Netflix, and it would have been a 5-minute pre-credit sequence in a movie, wouldn't it? So I love the fact that we've had more space to develop everything out. So it's the same story, but my God, with so much in it. Like, just they've gone deeper, which is great. And the writing teams have all been brilliant. I mean, you see yourself. It's worked out great. I'm really happy.
Awesome. Now, coming up, you have Jupiter's Legacy Requiem, the third and I guess final installment of your comic series.
Yeah.
So you kind of just started teasing that, and that is its own thing. I mean, the comics and the shows are separate. So, what do you have planned for this? And like, what exactly? How are you going to wrap this up? It's such an ambitious story.
I know, it's insane. I thought about this series the whole series, like Jupiter's, for 2 months, 8 weeks before I started writing, which I've never done before. I normally think about things for 2 weeks. But I thought about it for 8 weeks, and I'd post-it notes all over my walls, like a crazy guy. And I'd just come in and I looked like mad. I was just staring at post-it notes and moving them around the room and everything for like 8 weeks. I worked out the back history for all these characters and also the future of where all their descendants were going to be and everything. So this is the story about their descendants, So we've had 4 volumes so far. We've done the past, we've done the present, and now the story is going to be one generation into the future, which is so fun to play with, So now, a huge tens of millions of people are going to know who Chloe and Hutch are. So Chloe and Hutch's children are going to be really interesting to see in June. So that's where we begin, Chloe and Hutch's kids. And it's a whole resolution to everything we've seen. What was the island really? Because we've never had that explained. Where has this all been going? What's this story really been about? The final 12 issues explains all.
Awesome. Do you guys have the seasons broke up into different do you have the seasons for the future of the show all mapped out?
We know we've got. I mean, the books are a good template. We know the books are all sitting there for us. So we're just we have a very rough plan, but I mean everything all depends on, hopefully, not to get too cocky, that the audiences respond the way we think. Well, but we feel good about it. Like we feel as if people are going to like this. Like the response so far has been amazing. So we really feel this has got a lot of legs, I think, you know. So yeah, we do. I mean, we talk privately all the time about what we'd like to do, but nothing can be formal until we get our numbers.
Awesome. Well, it was nice speaking with you, Mark. That's my time. Good luck. You know, I'm a fan of the series, so I'm excited to see more. Hey, nice to see you guys.
What's up, Joe?
Not much. So I guess let's just start off with this. We'll start off with you, Tanika. What makes Jupiter's Legacy stand out from other superhero stories that are coming out today?
Well, what makes Jupiter's Legacy stand out from other superhero stories that are coming out today is the fact that it's a behind the scenes look at family relationship. I think, you know, all the stuff that we kind of try and keep hidden, that we don't really want to talk about, it highlights all of those aspects. And we get a little messy and a little dirty with some of these characters, you know, understanding that they don't have it all together, and that even though they're doing these fantastic, amazing things with their powers, that they're still just, you know, regular people at the end of the day, and that they have complex, you know, issues like anybody else. So I think that's kind of what the heart of the story is. And also the aspect that it looks at family, really concentrates on family relationships and the bonds that tie.
Awesome. And Mike, you play, you know, it's a legacy character. How do you feel about that?
You know, I feel that Jupiter's Legacy is the ultimate origin story for superheroes. And I'm really glad that we're doing this as a series versus, you know, a film, because you would lose so much. There's just so much to this world, this universe that, you know, Mark has created. You just get to, over time, you meet these people, and as the episodes go on and, you know, hopefully the seasons go on, you'll start to see, okay, well, that's why this person does this. That's why they're like this. You know, they, like Tanika said, you got these people with powers, but they still got a lot of stuff they need to get together, you know? So even if someone isn't into the whole superhero genre, I think that they're going to be a believer after this, because for one, it's so well done. But also we're dealing with some superhumans with very human problems, you know, family drama between father and daughter, father and son, brothers. And yeah, there's just so much to this world that anybody can relate to. So that to me is what really makes it different than anything else.
And Mike, so knowing, you know, that this is a comic series that has already come out and has the history explored so many times, but the show is fleshing things out. What do you want to see in the future of the series? Without spoiling too much.
Exactly. Yeah, we got some stuff we got some stuff that Netflix doesn't want us to say, but also I want people to go for the ride. I mean, yeah, you just got to go for the ride for this. But first thing that comes to mind is, so in the comic, Fitz is, you know, Caucasian. He's a Caucasian male, and, you know, being African-American now, it's just a totally different thing that we can look at, especially starting in 1929. You know, the experiences that Fitz has is different than Sheldon's and really everybody else. Just, we live in the same world, but it's a different world. And coming from someone or a group of people who at times feel powerless, to be given this power, it just gives us some really interesting things to look into. So that's what I'm looking forward to from Jupiter's.
And I think, you know, just to like what Mike's saying here is, I think that there's a huge opportunity here also to touch upon, you know, a little bit of the backstory, because, you know, just the sheer fact that Fitz is, you know, African-American and, you know, has that background where he started off as not necessarily, you know, he's working at a steel mill, if we're really honest about it. And his family came to a point where now he's got this amazing intelligence. That's actually one of his superpowers. He's an avid reader, super intelligent, and has started from essentially the bottom, and now he's here. So I think I'm very interested to see what they do with these characters and really highlight some of these things that maybe we haven't seen before. You know, the fact that they are intelligent, that they do, you know, do things like, you know, they're doctors. Essentially, at the end of things, they're able to use their powers for good to help other people and stuff. So I think that it would be really cool for audiences to be able to see that example highlighted now, especially in the world that we're living in.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed the series. I'm looking forward to more. So I hope you guys have a great day.
Nice. All right, take it easy, Joseph.
Let's start off with a question for Matt. So you play George, aka Skyfox, and he's an interesting character. So I just wanted to know what your favorite part about playing him was.
I love playing kind of the mystery and the complexity of George and who is this guy? Is he, what's going on in his head? But I also really, really love playing the kind of the witty, fun aspect of him. Things kind of roll off. Are they affecting him more deeply, which we don't know, possibly. But I love that, his life is sort of a production and his one-liners. I just love playing that kind of. I think he's a breath of fresh air, maybe, and some of the scenes that make you feel twisted and mentally unstable. And we're seeing Sheldon go through his things, and I love that some of his one-liners are just kind of, he's in his own show a little bit. I kind of like that.
Now, Ben, you play Walter, and you basically have two different versions of the character. And I just wanted to know, what's your approach to the two different eras, and how do you separate them?
I think what I loved doing was making them as different as I possibly could. Once I knew we were playing both sides of the same man, and I think once I like to create a really strong backstory. And that backstory can, work if you're doing something 5 minutes after you've created the backstory, or in this case, 100 years later. And they're very different, but I have them linked by a massive sense of insecurity. And I think both versions of Walter are riddled with insecurities, but those insecurities impact in him in very different ways, before he gets his power and after he gets his power. So it was just great fun to kind of to be able to kind of play around in that sandpit, really.
Now, to follow up, the series is very much about the black and white, the good versus evil, heroes and villains, but then how we are able to kind of dance in between those threads. Mm-hmm. And so, Ben, I wanted to ask you, if you had to say there's one villain, who would you say is the true villain of this series?
I think that's what's brilliant about what Mark's written, though. I don't think there is a true villain. I think Walter always believes he is acting in a very, very positive way, even though he might be convincing himself of that. But it's really hard. I mean, as it goes on into other seasons, I think if we get that far, then you see Walter engage in some pretty extreme behavior. But I wouldn't like to call him a villain. I don't, I just can't. I can't go there. Don't make me do it.
And so, Matt, your character, we get to see a certain side of him, and then he's presented a completely different way in the present day. So I wanted to ask you, kind of to follow up on the aspect of being a villain and you playing the true supervillain of the series. What are you excited to see in the future? Without spoiling, but what do you want to see as far as George goes in season 2?
Well, season 2, I just want to meet George. When we saw him, he was more or less a construct of Walt's mind. So that's really not the real George. So I'm looking forward to meeting him and seeing what he's doing. Why is he gone? Why is he absent? Why has he been gone all these years? Why doesn't he want to see his son? I'm looking forward to all of that, and really kind of going back to your last question and sort of what Ben was saying. I love that the series really points to the shades of gray between good and evil, and I think to what Ben said, there's a degree where every character sort of lies in a shade of gray, possibly except for Utopian at this point. So I'm looking forward to exploring those shades of gray and why we think that he's the villain.
Awesome. Well, it was nice talking to you guys. That's my time. Enjoy the series. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you very much.
How's everyone doing this morning?
Hi, Joseph.
Good. How are you?
Evening, I guess, for you guys, or midday. So let's start off by afternoon at time. Sorry.
No.
So let's start off by, I want to ask all three of you something. And Elena, why don't you start first? So what's the biggest challenge of playing characters who have such daunting legacies and responsibilities?
What's the challenge in playing characters with legacy? Oh my God, where do we begin? There's so much to unpack. I mean, particularly with Chloe, she's dealing with a lot. She's navigating a lot of problems at the moment. Self-loathing, guilt for, towards not being involved with the family and the union and the code. She has all these powers. She doesn't want to use them, but she also ends up using them because they're quite tethered to her emotions. So she set her temper off and boom, there's maybe a car getting chucked across the room. But she's also got emotional pain going. There's just a lot. And that's what to me was so exciting in playing this role and this comic in general and the adaptation and that it's here, it's coming out, it's something different, it's something fresh. And Joseph, I don't know, have you seen all of it? What are your thoughts?
Yeah.
Are we happy?
Enjoyed it. Yes.
Good.
Ian?
Yeah, I would say Hutch was born into this position of society that he never asked for and never wanted to have. I think there's a counter legacy to the union that his is one that keeps him isolated, that he's completely rebelling against and trying to dismantle. So I think this guy is actually rebelling every step of the way of the society that the union has created.
Awesome. Brandon?
I think the hardest thing for Brandon is that no matter what he does, it's never good enough. All he wants to be is to be his father, to be the next utopian, and he finds himself failing. Like, he knows he's failing, and the rest of the world knows he's failing. The rest of the union can see it as well. So it's not only carrying his father's legacy, but carrying that amount of pressure from everyone else. And he's definitely his own worst enemy. And I think we're going to see a big transformation from Brandon to come, hopefully.
Awesome. Yeah. And so that kind of leads me to my next question, because it feels like we're, having watched the series, that we're only scratching the surface here. So
absolutely.
What are you guys most excited to see in the future without, giving too much away? Just give us a little tease of what you're excited for.
I'm excited to see more clutch action. I'm pushing this. I'm shamelessly pushing this because I love that relationship. I think it's fiery, it's juicy, it's exciting. I'm excited to see how that relationship develops. Also, the tension between Brandon and Chloe, because there's like I feel like in how we approached it, like our characters were really close when they were little, and then they drifted apart. There's a lot of factors going on, and power struggles. So I'm excited to see how both of these relationships I have with these two boys pan out.
I'm excited to see how Brandon and Walter's relationship starts to blossom and how they begin to interact a lot more and, realize how similar they are and how much they have in common when it comes to Sheldon without giving too much away.
Yeah, I would say I'm excited about, there's a lot of tension building between Brandon and his father. And I think there's also a lot of tension building in this journey that Hutch is on to find his father. And I'm excited to see if how these relationships develop and, if my character meets my father and what would happen.
So the show, tries to portray a strong sense of black and white and the separation between the two. Why is that important for the younger generation to kind of reconcile those differences? Because Chloe spends all of her time rejecting both heroes and villains, and you two, straddle the line. Your two characters straddle the lines. So, Elena, why is your character kind of like the central, not the central role, but her struggle being the central theme to this whole reconciliation?
That's a great question, Joseph. I feel like she represents the disorder opposite the utopian's order. She represents the chaos, the rebellion, even though there's heart and there's layers to her and there's pain behind those eyes. But I think it's important because it shows the difference between how the youth and their values, their perspectives are different to the standards that have been set and invented by, namely, the utopian, and that construct and that box that they're trying to put everybody in that she doesn't want to be put in. She doesn't want to be defined and told what her path is. She wants to forge it for herself. But I also think a big part of it is the belief that, this ideal that is unobtainable is just this kind of the selling of perfection, which she's also doing on billboards when she's selling products and doing the endorsements and whatnot. So that's not lost on her, and I think it fuels that self-loathing. But to quote Kirk Franklin, I feel like she doesn't want to gain the whole world and lose her soul. Are you a pimp Hustler, tell me what's your title. America has no more stars, now we call them idols. We say idols, while we teach in prosperity. The first thing to prosper should be inside of me. I feel like that's how she feels.
I got nothing after that. That was great.
I don't think we do either.
Literal mic drop. All right. Thank you so much, guys. Have a good one.
Dude, thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. Take care, man.